All children need to be loved and taught. Regarding the teaching of responsibility, I tend to use more examples throughout the training, in the video answers, in the written answers that involve children who are older, notably in their teens. Let me suggest why. 1, older children are simply able to handle more responsibilities, so you will need more guidance and examples as you teach them to be responsible. You don't have to teach a 4-year-old how to be responsible about driving and caring for a car, for example. Second reason, when older children fail to be responsible, the consequences tend to be more troubling. When a teenager is texting and driving, people can die, whereas the consequences are far less dramatic when a 2-year-old spills milk on the carpet, for example. Third reason I tend to talk about teaching responsibility more to older children. Older children are louder, not just in the volume of their voices, but louder in the effects of their behavior, and they're cleverer about resisting their responsibilities. Often they can come up with excuses not to do the right things in more ways than you will be able to respond to. Hence, our heightened need to discuss how to love and teach them. But despite those 3 reasons for talking about responsibility more with older children, today we're going to be talking about teaching responsibility to younger kids. A mother writes to me and she says, quote, "My 2-year-old won't put away his toys after playing with them." I'm sure none of you have heard that before. She continues and says, "His toys are littered from wall to wall in whatever room he uses, and then I have to help him put them away. It's just overwhelming to him. And it's a real bother some days when I'm busy or tired, but I wonder how capable he is of cleaning up a mess that big. Is it too much for me to expect him to do that and to teach him to do that? Help." End quote. As I answer this question, I'll be talking both to the mother who wrote it and to you who are watching or listening. So when I use the word you, I'm referring both to her and to you. This will involve you more in listening for something that applies to your child, not just in this specific circumstance, but in many circumstances, regardless of their age, gender, whatever. So first, let's talk about age. You might be wondering if age 2 is too young to set an expectation for a child to put toys away. Let me leave no doubt about this. No, it's not too young. If a child can stack blocks to a level of, say, 2 to 4 blocks, not really tough, which happens at about 15 to 18 months. So that's considerably less than 2. Then if a child can do that, stack blocks at 2 to 4 height, that child can put toys away. It should be intuitively fairly obvious. And trust me on this, I've practiced that association over and over again. When instructed to put the toys away, however, because, well, we human beings tend to prefer the easy way, the child will act baffled, puzzled, or resistant. But they do understand, especially if you just show them what you mean by put away the toys. Always show them something. If they act baffled, here's how you do it. But you put away a handful of toys and you tell them to continue. At that age, they are capable of executing the task. So don't be paralyzed by doubt. Now, let's go over some responsibilities and consequences for you and your child. First, you, because you're always the key. 1, if your child can, in your words, I'm using the words you gave me, litter any room with toys from wall to wall, then your child has access to far too many toys. This is really simple. If a child can fill a room with toys, the kid's got either too many toys or simply has access to too many toys. Sometimes several times too many toys. So what's the obvious solution? Put the toys in 5 or 6 or 8, or depends on how many toys you've got, plastic containers, and put them all away, far out of his reach and even awareness. It's best if he doesn't even know where they are. Leaving just one container out at a time, a container with which he cannot litter the room from wall to wall. You'll figure out whether to leave the same container out for a day or 2 days or a week or several hours or whatever. You'll figure out those details. I'm not going to tell you how to handle that. When he's put the toys away for a particular container, well, then he can have another one. But until he's put the toys away, he can't play with any other toys and possibly may not be able to do some other things too. What if he's playing and realizes that a particular toy he likes isn't in the container that you gave him for that particular day, and he cries? And you might be tempted to think, as many sympathetic parents do, and it's well-meaning, oh no, my poor child, I'm traumatizing my little boy. I'm keeping from him his favorite toy. Oh, nah, get over it. You tell him that when he picks up and puts back in the container every toy on the floor, which of course is only the toys from that particular container, then you will get out the other container that does contain the toy that he's looking for. This is not complicated stuff. And it's not a lot of work for you. He's putting all the toys away. You're just getting a container out and setting it on the floor. He could take care of throwing them all over the floor. Or you could tell him that he could have that toy another day. That doesn't work as well for really young kids because another day makes no sense to little kids. We'll do this next month. Try saying that to a 2-year-old. It doesn't even compute. There's nowhere for it to land. Second thing you need to do, you show him how to pick up the toys. We mentioned that earlier. You show him once. These are smart kids, but oh, they love to play with us. The kid will look at you with a look of just absolute mystification and say, well, how, Mommy? Clever little stinkers. And you'll show them for the 120th time how to put the toys away, and then the child will say, well, keep showing me. And there are parents who will put the toys away, well, for the rest of the kid's life. 3, you tell him that he has to clean up until you say the job is done, until you're satisfied with the completion of the job. If he claims he's finished cleaning up his toys, but the job isn't done, which is going to be the case early on, you say, oh, well, I'll come back and check on you later. Just notice, with exactly this facial expression, well, you couldn't have exactly this facial expression because you don't have my face, but calm. You just go, I'll come back and check on you later. Yes, he does understand what you mean. You're going to come back and check on him later and expect the job to be done. And you're going to say, I'll come back and check and see if you're finished. The implication is, and the child will understand the implication. If they don't, you can say it. You can't do anything else. Well, but I need some orange juice first. I'm dying to give you some orange juice. After you finish putting your toys away, they come up with everything not to finish a job. And you just keep repeating the same thing. 4, you do not, after showing him how, you do not ever again help him put away his toys. It's just too simple. And it's a way to teach the child to be responsible. If you help him, you're cheating your child of learning this lesson. Now, 5, what if he refuses? What if he just goes, I'm not going to do it? Then you reach over and lead him by his little fingers to his room, and you set him on his bed, and you tell him that he can come out when he's ready to clean up the toys. Or if you happen to be playing with the toys in his room, then you take him to some other room and have him sit in a chair and say, you can get up and move when you're ready to clean up the toys. I've talked a lot about how to tell a child that they can't do another thing until they've completed the thing that they're doing. We've talked about that in the sales page when we talked about whining, the sales page, or chapter 0. And we've talked about how to modify other behaviors by telling them you can do task or chore or activity B after you have finished activity A. So first, we talked about your responsibilities here. Now, what is your child's responsibility and possible consequences? It's your child's job over and over and over to trust you and follow instructions. That just ain't that complicated. It's your job to love and teach. It's your child's job to trust you and follow instructions. If you ever get confused about what your job as a parent is and what your child's job is as a child, we just covered it in less than a minute. They can trust you and follow instructions only as you love and teach them consistently as described in the parenting training, the ridiculously effective parenting training. Love, teaching with words, then teaching with consequences. That's what we've talked about in the training. Now, another example. We talked about putting away toys. Alice, a mother, called me and said, quote, my son, Tony, is 11 months old. So I told you we were going to talk about teaching responsibility to young children. 11 months old is pretty young. She continues and says, every time I put food on his high chair tray, he knocks it off onto the floor and then just laughs hysterically. Surely every parent alive has seen a child do this. She continues, he just started doing it recently, and he does it over and over, no matter how many times I tell him not to. End quote. So remember, I'm talking to her on the phone because I said she called me. And I said, so what do you do when he knocks the food on the floor? She said, well, I clean it up and we start over. And I tell him not to knock the food on the floor, and he does it, and we do it again. I just couldn't help but laugh out loud. I said, Alice, dear, knocking food on the floor is just fun to a kid. It's not mean-spirited. It's not testing boundaries and all that complicated psychological stuff. It's fun knocking food on the floor. It's like knocking over. Try this sometime when you're playing with a kid who's that age. Stack 6 to 8 blocks up yourself, and then have the child walk in the room. The child is drawn to the stack of blocks like a magnet and will knock over the tower of blocks. It's just fun. They experience actually a healthy kind of power to see that when they act, there's a reaction, that they have actually a relationship to the world. When they throw a ball, the ball moves. They knock over blocks. They throw food. They throw toys across the room. But it's even more fun if they can watch you clean up the mess and set it back up for them to do it again. You're like the pin setter at a bowling alley. You're like that machine at a bowling alley that resets the pins so that you can keep knocking them down. And if you want to be a pin setter for the rest of your life, you can. But it's a little silly, and the child learns nothing. So she said, so what am I supposed to do? I made a suggestion about what she could do. She went and did it and then reported back to me. She said at the next meal, little Tony, who, remember, is 11 months old, he's not even a year old yet, knocked his food off the tray, predictably, laughed hysterically, knocked it onto the floor. Mom calmly removed the tray from the high chair and set it on the kitchen counter. Well, now Tony's going, well, cool, we're going to do something different, as opposed to watching Mom clean up the mess, possibly. So she took Tony's little hand and helped him down from his seat, and then helped him climb a step stool that brought him up to the level of the kitchen sink. She helped him wet a couple of washcloths and then showed him how to clean up all the food on the floor. That's a really slow process because at 11 months, children are not fast at cleaning, well, anything, and they do a really lousy job. But Tony was actually finding this kind of interesting. Now, Mom could have done the job much faster by herself, which she had done many times before. But cleaning up the mess wasn't the point, not by a long shot. The point was teaching her son responsibility. So they cleaned up the mess. Sometimes she had to actually put her hand on his hand and show him how to clean things up with the cloth. And then she showed Tony how to put more food from the refrigerator and the cupboards back on the tray for him to eat. And then sat Tony in his chair and put the tray in front of him. And after a couple of seconds, he kind of giggled and predictably knocked everything on the floor again. I told her that he would do that. And Mom repeated exactly the same process. No irritation, no impatience. Just set the tray up on the counter, took him by his little hand, took him up to the sink, got a washcloth, they cleaned up the mess. Then she put the tray in front of Tony for the third time. He looked at the tray thoughtfully for several seconds. She said he sucked on his lip. You can just see a little kid doing this, can't you? And then ate his meal. She said he never knocked food on the floor again. Remarkable. A lesson beautifully taught in a relatively short period of time. A lesson about responsibility to an 11-month-old. Nobody got irritated, and the child learned an important principle. Since we already used the example of stacking blocks, she taught him this much about responsibility. And now the next time, she'll stack another block, teaching him about responsibility. And Tony will become stronger and stronger in understanding this principle. But it starts young. It needs to start young. Even very young children can be loved and taught. They have to be, or teaching them becomes increasingly difficult with every passing year.